Is insurance fraud a victimless crime? Nobody seems to care about insurance fraud anymore. What's the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear the words insurance fraud? Perhaps something along these lines? Serves them right, those insurance companies charge too much premium anyway. Or, it's fair game for anyone who pays for insurance. Or, it's everyone's money so it's nobody's money. Or, doesn't hurt anyone, what's the big deal? Or, we all claim a bit more than we should. Or maybe, my neighbor made a fraudulent claim and nothing happened to him. The truth is, most folks do not care about insurance fraud. Many of us think of insurance fraud as a harmless or a victimless crime. We put insurance fraud in the same category as a white lie, a benign mistake, not one deserving of our attention, much less any penalty or punishment, definitely not jail time, as it doesn't hurt anyone. We don't club insurance fraud in the same category as a break-in and entry, assault or arson. When an insurance fraud is committed and the perpetrators are caught, it does not get much attention. It rarely makes primetime news. But should we as society ignore insurance fraud? Is it a small matter, not one deserving of our time or our attention? Before we dive deeper, let's first understand what is an insurance fraud. Insurance fraud is an attempt to exploit an insurance contract, and that exploitation can take many forms. From completely fabricated claims to claiming a bit more than one should. In case where innocent mistakes are made in claims, that is without intent, it is considered to be non-compliance rather than fraud. It may surprise some that insurance fraud is a serious crime punishable by jail time. Yes, that's right, jail time. In Australia, regardless of whether the fraud is committed on a one-off basis, that is opportunity, or as a series of fraud committed by a professional criminal, which is premeditated, it is considered by law to be a serious indictable offense and penalties can be up to 10 years imprisonment or fine or both. But why is it taken so seriously? Is it not a victimless crime? If there are any, who are the victims of an insurance fraud? According to the Insurance Fraud Bureau of Australia, insurance fraud is estimated to cost the Australian economy up to $2.2 billion every year. That's right, billion with a B. Insurance fraud is the most prevalent economic crime in Western countries. In most countries, it exceeds even tax evasion. And that matters because all that money, that total cost of fraud, comes out of everyone's pockets through increased premiums. A significant amount of money is spent on fraud detection, on teams to assess, detect, pursue, and on legal costs to charge and try the perpetrators in court. Insurance fraud, like most fraud, is a hidden crime, and much of it remains unrecognized, undetected, or unproven. It is difficult to establish precise figures on how prevalent it is. AIC, or the Australian Institute of Criminology, estimates that the incidence of fraud is up to 10% of all claims in Australia. Imagine if there was no insurance fraud. It means more savings in your home and content insurance, life insurance, your travel insurance, health insurance, car, bike, or boat insurance, insurance component of your vehicle registration, business liability insurance, and the list goes on and on. Fraudulent insurance claim ultimately costs everyone who takes out a policy and damages honest policyholders. When an insurance fraud is committed, you are the victim. I am the victim. We are all the victims. It is not a victimless crime. It is a victimful crime, if there is such a word. Well, now there is. And since we are all the victims, we all ought to do something about it. If not report it, at least discourage or stop it when it is in our power and our capacity to do so. In Australia, reporting insurance fraud goes against our culture. Most of us will not dob on our neighbors, our friends, our family, or our colleagues unless it seriously hurts or impacts us personally or we really dislike them. Perhaps there's a psychological explanation for why we value loyalty above justice at times. Australians are loyal to a fault, and in Australia, mateship is a sacred bond. If we were put in a dilemma of choosing between keeping the peace or reporting a neighbor's crime, most of us would choose to keep the peace, especially if it's a minor crime. We hate disrupting the lives of others, even if they are not that close to us. We love peace and serenity. But perhaps the problem lies in how we frame the dilemma. Maybe we should not think of the options as friendship versus betrayal. If we reframed it to choosing what we are more loyal to our principles and values or loyal to the status quo, then the right choice would present itself. We need to protect the moral fabric of our society. We need to ensure that the world we hand over to our children is a world where justice is valued above all else. I'm not suggesting that ignoring insurance fraud alone is a slippery slope that will eventually destroy society. I'm not saying that if we let the smallest of insurance fraud go unpunished, before we know it, our streets will be ridden with crimes. But often what is ignored grows, much like the weeds in our garden. And if more is not done to stop insurance fraud, then it will continue to grow and we will continue to bear the cost. And we cannot afford that, especially now with the rising cost of living. Ignoring insurance fraud corrupts society. When we ignore insurance fraud, we lower our ethical stance. When we are silent about it, we are quietly declaring that we are okay with a crime being committed. And in permitting it to happen, we are in some small way participating in it. Addressing insurance fraud goes beyond just reducing premiums. It goes beyond creating awareness and the deterrence of a punishable crime. Addressing insurance fraud strengthens our values and helps us prepare a better world for our children. Insurance companies have a moral and legal obligation to detect and report insurance fraud. Thankfully, a lot is being done now to deter and stop insurance fraud. Fraud detection is not accomplished in a single, simple step. It can be hard, costly, and often time-consuming to prove intent. But insurance organizations are getting ready for the battle. And the secret weapon? Harnessing the power of data. But that's a whole different video. Thank you for your time.